Warning, you are about to hear from someone who actually enjoyed this movie. If that is the kind of thing you, your personal self, cannot find find it in yourself to tolerate or accept, this would be the time to close down this video on YouTube or to stop watching this stream. You have been warned. So, I actually wanted to make a custom background for this, and it proved to be basically impossible, so I quit. I actually got the video file ripped without any real issues. The problem was making it loop. I actually wanted to have the Warcraft 3 background here. Didn't work. Wouldn't work out. Now, however, to make it up for you guys, I decided to go ahead and have some music playing. I thought it would be appropriate. Get things a little bit working a little bit better. What do you guys think? Now, what I'm going to be amused by is I imagine some people don't actually recognize this music. In fact, I would imagine most of you don't. You could probably extrapolate what the song is, but I doubt you actually recognize it. Now, let me go ahead and start off with the blanket review opinion. Yes, I liked the movie. No, I don't think it was flawless. That was, I mean, it's one sentence. One of the things I wanted to say here, though, is... Oh, music's too loud. Hang on, I can fix that. I can fix that. How's that? Help me out with audio balance, guys. I need your input. I don't have an actual mixer that I can listen to. So, I actually have one really big flaw with the movie, personally. And I bet no one is going to guess it. I mean that sincerely. I bet absolutely no one out there is going to guess what my biggest flaw in the movie was. No one else has that I've talked to about it already. In fact, the other people who I know who have seen it, who I've talked to, had completely different flaws, and in fact, for them, it wasn't even a flaw at all. Which I find hilarious and awesome. As usual, the various distinction. More down, really? Okay. How's that? As usual, I find the distinction between human preferences and human choices and opinions and whatnot to be one of the more interesting and fascinating things about our culture as a species in general. So, let's talk about a few other things. First of all, I'm a little bit of a Warcraft lorehound. You may or may not be aware of this. I did do a couple of months of a WoW lore run. So, you know, that's kind of a thing. Speaking from that perspective, let me just go ahead and put this out here, right out here, blanket statement. I don't mind that they changed the lore. Any more than I mind that they changed the lore of the Lord of the Rings movies, or the Jurassic Park movie, or the Harry Potter movies. That will never be a thing that bothers me. I'm sorry, I am not that kind of person. It is not that I don't understand some people who think that is a negative. I do get that. I have heard that from a few thousand people, from a few thousand movies, you know? From comic book movies, to book movies, to television movies, to game movies. One of the most common complaints I hear from people is that they don't like the fact that they changed the lore, that they effectively started a new canon, to put it into such terms. Yeah, the idea of a movie universe. I've heard that from the MCU. And even though the MCU tends to be very well received, I have still heard people who don't like the fact that the MCU is different. That Tony Stark is not a complete jackass who was drunk all the time, who is evil. You know, that Xavier is not a creepy bastard, and so forth and so on. There are people who don't like that fact. And I just want to say this clearly. I get that. I'm not trying to be judgmental against people who think that way. All I am trying to give is the blanket statement that it doesn't bother me personally when they change the lore, when they are adapting a work, okay? I will actually talk about this subject in much more length when we get to the Lord of the Rings sixology review, ruminations, which will be happening later this year. Yes, we're going through all six. So now that I've got that blanket statement out there, now, with that blanket statement out there, I want to give the very first thought I had in the movie theater, which I'm sure some of you could guess. For the first about 30-ish minutes, give or take, the movie didn't actually contradict lore. established lore. I'm going to basically refer to that as original canon and movie canon, just to make my distinctions clear. For the first 30 minutes, everything that could be said wasn't a one-to-one exact parallel of the book. Because let's be honest, the original Warcraft game had nothing as far as real lore. It was so threadbare. And Chronicles Volume 2 has not come out, so we don't know exactly what actually happened in Warcraft 1. Still, to this day, there's still inconsistencies in the presentation because of retconning. The only thing we have to really establish that is that one book, and I can't remember the name of it right now, which covers the lead up to going through the Dark Portal and some of the events immediately after it during Warcraft 1. So, for the most of the intro, everything kind of fit rather consistently. And I go ahead and say, as an aside, I was actually surprised they showed off the Draenei. Anyone else? I know I wasn't the only one with that comment. I had my sister as well was like, wait, is that a Draenei? The fact that they actually showed Draenei at all was interesting. And, yeah, exactly, Revan. Right there in the beginning, they were being used as fuel for the initial portal. Now, obviously, Medivh was not there to help open the portal personally, but again, that kind of contradicts the book, which contradicts the first game, which is contradicted in WoW. 3 different versions of those events, so we're not 100% certain which of those is existing canon. So that was cool. There were 2 scenes that helped flesh out Gul'dan that I actually liked a lot. Right off the bat, there's a scene where one of the Draenei is like, "Oh my God, please, take my child, save, do not kill my child." And Gul'dan doesn't do what I was expecting. I actually like Gul'dan's presentation in this movie because he is not portrayed as a stereotypically evil villain. He is simply portrayed as an evil villain. What I mean by that is there was a great scene right at the beginning that I was just referencing where the woman says, "Please take my child," and his response is not or "the weak deserve to perish" or any of the typical things you would expect. Instead, what he says is, "I can't. I need them. I need all of them." That was an interesting response and not what I was expecting. There's another scene not too long after that where he actually helps Draka give birth to Thrall. And, so Thrall is born and is a stillbirth, and he looks up, sees a deer, rips the life force out of the deer in order to imbue fell energy into Thrall to save his life. And then, of course, he says, another warrior for the Horde. But again, that's not really what I was expecting from him as a character. I liked that. I liked that just tiny little shading, making him more... giving him more, a little bit more dimensions than I was expecting. And hello, HGC Teddy. Welcome to my stream. Shoutouts. Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got, Magister. He may view the, he may be, completely, using the Fel and have no real issue with doing horrible things in order to accomplish his ends. But I got the very strong impression that this Gul'dan actually was basically trying to make a better orc society, a better orc life, a better orc world, or something like that. He struck me very much as not a patsy for the Legion, which is how he's been portrayed in the past, and not the "I'm willing to do absolutely anything for power" Gul'dan, which is usually the way where we see Gul'dan present in alternate. So that was nice. I liked that. I liked that. I liked the fact that Thrall was the firstborn orc born in Azeroth. Nice touch. I kind of skipped over something. So, one of the interests... I want to talk about Fel quite a bit, actually. But one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is... that was awesome to hell. I'll talk about that later, too. One of the... damn it, losing my train of thought. Give me a second. I've been so tired lately. I didn't get home last night until like 1:30 or something like that. Hang on, give me a second. I was talking about Thrall. I was talking about... oh! So, as you may or may not know, the director and some of the creative staff have said more than once that they would actually really enjoy doing a Warcraft 3 movie. I feel like that came across a lot in this movie. Not the least of which being the fact that Thrall, despite being a newborn baby, actually had a fairly large amount of story sections and screen time devoted to him. Which, I mean, I kind of get it. They're clearly leading that up to something in the future. I mean, duh, right? However, the other thing I liked is right at the beginning, very first thing, is we see a parallel, an obvious deliberate parallel to that wonderful teaser cinematic to Warcraft 3. Anyone remember that? It was the first thing they ever announced with Warcraft 3, with an orc and a human on a battered plane, and bam! And then they actually fight each other, and then an infernal comes down and interrupts it, and then we see their dying hands, and that was the teaser for Warcraft 3. You remember that? Very, very clear. They used the same camera angles in several cases, even, as that scene from Warcraft 3 in the very first scene of the movie. There's quite a few scenes like that clearly showcase Warcraft 3 much more than 1 or 2, or even WoW for that matter. Now, that's not to say WoW didn't have a very obvious, very powerful impact on the visual presentation of the movie. A lot of places were showcased and deliberately name-dropped specifically for that, I know that place feel. Whether that's going to bother you or not is going to depend on the individual, and as ever, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. It didn't bother me for what I like to call the familiarity factor. I've actually talked about this before. The idea that Civilization 5, okay? I've played the crap out of Civilization 5, but I tend to enjoy maps more when I know where I am. If I'm playing on a map of Earth, if I'm playing on a map of Azeroth, if I'm playing on a map of Middle-earth, some place that I recognize, I tend to enjoy the whole game I'm playing more because I am more familiar with what I'm working with, right? That's what I call the familiarity effect. I've talked about it extensively, both in my show and in real life. So for me, the fact that they would name-drop Deadwind Pass, the fact that they would name-drop Red Ridge Mountains, the fact that they actually met in the Goldshire Inn, and they would show things that actually look similar to the way they look in WoW, I'm okay with that. I will say that I completely fangushed over Stormwind. I want to meet the entire team of people who designed and built Stormwind and shake their hands, every single one of them. That is some amazing artwork design that they did, and the huge level of effort put into that is so on display and so awesome and so obvious. Some of it was clearly done to parallel the game, the WoW game. For example, there's a scene where someone's on a griffin riding in, and they kind of go down as if they're going into the little nook. Any of you Alliance players, you know exactly where that Alliance flight path is in Stormwind, right? Right there in that nook. There's the bridge, there's a little entrance, portcullis, and then there's this side nook here, and right there is where the flight path is. And the camera is actually following the griffin go down. He actually ends up going up and over it instead. But that initial approach was clearly designed for no other reason than to go to for the WoW players to say, dude! And I'm okay with that. I'm not going to be angry at anybody who isn't okay with that. And if anyone isn't and can give some reason for it, go for it. I'm listening. This is the whole point of a discussion. It's not just me talking to you. It's you talking to me, too. In fact, I just realized I forgot to put the chat up on screen. I'm sorry. Let me fix that. Sorry about that, guys. Hey, Darkstar. Well, actually, yes, Dakoita, because they actually did say in lore that the new Stormwind, the WoW Stormwind, is one that was designed to be basically the same as the original Stormwind, and there were visual distinctions. Most notably, the location of the actual castle was completely different, on purpose, again, which makes sense. Yes, correct, the Warcraft movie is a completely different canon. Initially, for the first 30 minutes, I thought it might be a pseudo-retcon, a pseudo-different presentation of the Warcraft lore, but then a few things started coming out that very clearly, very distinctly were a different continuity. I'll just toss out some big ones that strike me. Garona, 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 Garona. I'm serious, like most of the major changes to the lore are all centered around Garona. The fact that she isn't half Draenei, big change there. The fact that she wasn't Gul'dan's Death Knight slave. I actually talked about that semi-recently back in the WoW lore run. The fact that she didn't actually get into a romantic relationship with Medivh and have a child. The fact that she started getting close to Lothar, of all people, and the fact that she was not forced by Gul'dan to kill Lane, she was forced by Lane to kill Lane. Like I said, pretty much all of these are fairly clear distinctions in her character from the original, which again doesn't bother me, because it's a new continuity, and I knew that walking in. It's worth noting. Yes, no Badon is a positive. It's possible Erun or Eroan, but they make it pretty clear. At least I thought they made it pretty clear by the way they talked about her, that she was just a cursed birth. That she was basically a stunt, a stunted birth. You know, a defect. You know, cursed is what they call her. And given the way they talk about it and the way they present that, there's no implication for me that she was actually half Draenei. Now, I will say that some things I have heard, and I heard this in chat not too long ago, that people... That would have been cool, Cuckoo. There are some people who said that there's not enough alliance, for example. There's not enough dwarves, there's not enough blood elves, or elves, or anything like that. I should say high elves at this point in time, etc. So... I can't personally agree with most of the complaints I've heard about that. Most of those come from reviewers. I have said more than a few times that the movie critics are idiots. I have been saying that for about a year at this point, and every new movie that comes out just gives me more reason to say that. Oh, speaking of which, I should have put this earlier. A little bit of a boilerplate here. I walked into this movie expecting to like it. I hate to say that, but the reason why, and this I have to be honest with you guys about this, the reason why is because I heard so much criticism from the movie critics bashing it, just hating on it. I told Pro to remind me of this before we started. Right before I walked in, one of the last reviews I heard about the movie before I walked into the theater was one, and I'm going to be paraphrasing this here, was the idea that the quote was something along the lines of, "This movie reminds me of Battlefield Earth, but with less wit and worse effects." I've seen Battlefield Earth. I personally consider Battlefield Earth to be one of the worst movies ever made. I've analyzed Battlefield Earth. WTF. So I went into the movie expecting to like it. I really did. Because, and this is true, this has been true for most of my life. Usually when critics praise a movie, I don't like it, and usually when critics bash a movie, I do like it. This is, and there is some absolute and definite pendulum theory effect in there, but it's also because of the fact that I've noticed my own movie tastes simply don't seem to line up with movie critics. I'm not saying I'm some different elitist person who's better than everyone else with my movie cred or whatever. I'm just saying that in my experience, movie critics, not other people, not, you know, movie critics over here, movie reviewers over here, they tend to think about blah in terms of a movie, and I tend to think about blah. That's just been my experience for the last million years. And yeah, as to hell with your crap says, it is extremely popular to hate on Warcraft. It is popular to hate on the popular. Hi, Ginger Ninja, by the way. Yeah, Necro actually shared that quote with me, I believe, before, because I've seen that same review. This movie is bad because it's too serious for a movie based on a game. WoW is a lighthearted game with fat pandas jumping around. Has that person ever played WoW? Oh, no, stupid question. Of course they haven't. I think I made it fairly clear going through the lore run just how actually dark and horrifying Warcraft as a setting really is. And I believe one of my, I think it was Takoida, actually was the person who made the comment that, okay, so how many other horrible, disgusting, nightmarish ways are there to die in this setting? Because we just kept coming up with new ones. You know? So, let's go ahead and answer some questions. This is a good time. Was Orgrim a member of the Frostwolf in regular continuity? No, he was actually a member of the Blackrock clan. The fact that the two of them had a friendship was actually considered a bit of a taboo, since the clans weren't really coordinating before the formation of the demonic horde. Yes, Grom Hellscream was very clearly and obviously present. If I can make one quick comment, I found it interesting that both Grom and Kargath were very visually distinct and immediately apparent. Both of them had basically no actual lines. They just were there in the back, and it's just like, huh? You know. However, I find it interesting that, again, both Grom and Kargath were immediately visually distinguishable. Like, everyone I went with 3 of my friends, and, well, 2 of my friends and my sister. My sister's my friend, but you get my point. All of us immediately were like, "It's Kargath!" Just, it's Grom! You know, immediately, right? I'm okay with that, especially since they looked just like they should. What I found interesting was that, and Gul'dan, of course, obviously looks interesting. What I was confused by was they changed the overall appearance of Blackhand significantly, actually. I didn't recognize Blackhand at all. In fact, until they name-dropped him as Blackhand, Warchief Blackhand, I had no idea who that orc was who kept showing up. Just weird that they're going to have both, immediate visual distinction, and then, who the heck is this guy? Oh, it's one of the major characters of the story. So I'm sorry. Let me scroll up. Like I said, I opened up for questions and I talked too long. That's just my nature. Scrolling up. Did I see the Murloc? Yeah, of course I did. Everyone in the audience saw the Murloc. We all were like, Murloc! Absolutely immediately. How hard would it be to get into WoW now? It is probably easier now to get into WoW than you ever could, previous to now. If you buy WoW right now, you get everything except for Legion with the purchase. And they're revamping the 1 through, I think, 20, or no, the 1 through 40 experience. The 1 through 60 experience has already been revamped. There's a lot of good ways to get into WoW at this point in time. Who isn't doomed in Warcraft? Yeah, no kidding. We made that comment that how many characters have had a happy retirement in the Warcraft setting? And we couldn't come up with any. Any major characters. Okay, so Zagoten asks a very relevant question, but I want to answer Fuchs first, because he asked it first. What is the overall plot of the movie? Orcs, humans, rah! That's a little bit of a summarization, but that is the plot of Warcraft 1, Orcs versus Humans. That's kind of the point, actually. I need to turn this down a bit. It's actually a little loud for me. There we go. It's a little bit better. Yeah, that made sense to me, too, to hell with her. Don't forget, Grom was also pretty much just starting his career in Warcraft 1 as a warrior. So my theater actually gave me the code thing. I'm going to make sure I show you the side that doesn't have the code, because I haven't turned it in yet. So, yeah, I got this little redeem your thing here. Now, this, I want to point out, is interesting. I figured this was worthless at first, because right now, I figured it was just a free copy of WoW, which is pointless, because WoW is already free for the first 20 levels. I don't have to buy the game to do that. No, this is actually a free month of sub. And I was actually going to try live to see if I could apply this to my account to add a month to my account. Because if I can, this is actually a pretty nice deal, just for going. Also, one of the friends that we went. So let's get to absolutely, Mac Daddy. Let's get to Zagoten's question. So there was some definite bad writing on display in the movie, and there was some definite bad directing on display in the movie. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. I'll talk about specifics later. But I mention that because even despite these rather significant negatives, I think, I still feel ignoring Warcraft ignoring the fact that I know WoW better than I know any setting, really. I still think it is a good movie, despite its obvious flaws. I would not call it an amazing movie without the knowledge and understanding of what was going on. Of course I do, Vandalia. As much as there is lore in because some of them don't actually have any significant lore at all. Thoughts on the magic special effects. Let me get to that in just a moment, Ginger. Don't let me forget. So, I mentioned this, though, because one of the people who went there, one of the people who went with us, has never played WoW. And his only exposure to Warcraft at all was basically through the rest of us. So, that person, who has no understanding of Warcraft, still very much enjoyed the movie. There were two couples down in the front row who had never done anything, had never played any of the games at all, who had never, played WoW whatsoever at all. They also enjoyed it. We actually got over, and while we were, doing our post-movie, go to the bathroom club, they were just kind of hanging out chatting, and we ended up just kind of roaming into that, because I'm a very social person, my sister's a very social person, and we ended up chatting with them about what they thought about it. And I was very curious to hear the opinion of people who had no exposure to Warcraft, and they also liked it. They also still enjoyed the movie. They still felt like it was a good movie. Had some good character moments, had some good action moments, and had an overall fairly strong narrative, despite the fact that it would have some writing issues at certain points in the thing. So they still liked it, despite having no exposure to it at all. All of this being said, go see Civil War Fugue and Warcraft. All this being said, I will say this. I absolutely think my enjoyment was increased being a Warcraft fan. I absolutely think that. Do keep in mind, the director, the writing team, the visual effects team are Warcraft fans. They play WoW. And it shows. But I don't think that's a bad thing personally, because there is a bit of a difference between what is usually referred to as fan wink, aka, here you go, and paying homage to something. It is my opinion, like I mentioned earlier, with that flight path to Stormwind. Like I mentioned earlier, it is my opinion, not saying it's absolute truth, that it was more paying homage to the games rather than just trying to do fan wanking. Just being like, here you go. That is just the way I perceived it. Like I said, certain things were done a little bit too much. And of course, Thrall's got a lot of screen time despite being a baby. But then again, at the same time, Thrall was a very important part of Durotan's story. So, I'm assuming you mean not a World of Warcraft fan, Taito, and not a now. So I'm going to assume that's a typo. I think any given viewer who's played Warcraft 3, because let's be honest, Warcraft 1 and 2 have no real story. Anyone who's played Warcraft 3 will probably still have an understanding of a lot of what's going on and be able to look at that and be like, aha, that kind of a thing, and have a pretty good perspective to go ahead and still enjoy the movie, my opinion. So let's answer Ginger Ninja's questions. Magic special effects. Absolutely loved them. I know this sounds weird, but I actually prefer the magic effects of the movie than I do most of the games, to the point where I thought it was amazing. Now, the overall spells they use are much, much more limited. Nevertheless, I felt that they were a great way to visually present it. I thought they were a great way to really showcase the kind of power the mages had, especially the portals. It is now my personal headcanon that that's how portals work, because that's a neat idea. I really, really liked the presentation of that. Absolutely. I cannot gush enough over the way magic was presented visually. I can't. It was good. Absolute top-notch. So, Draka's death. Hang on, have I missed any questions? How do I like the guy from Vikings? Let me answer that later, Zagon. So, Draka's death, I thought, was pretty spot on. Especially since it's actually fairly one-to-one, relatively one-to-one to how she died originally. The only absence, of course, being Durotan wasn't there. But the fact that she died killing her attacker, well, I'd say with her bare hands, but it'd be more accurate to say with her bare teeth in this case. I like how she went down. That is very Draka. She went down fighting, and it was awesome. The Doomhammer was awesome! Sorry, that's probably the one and only thing that I will genuinely fangasm about. The actual Doomhammer, the mace, was presented exactly correctly. It's giant, first of all. It's this huge mace. And the way they present it, it's not just the fact that it looks big. The way it had an impact on people and things that it hit, and the way that they carry it, it felt like it had the weight that it should. Bam! There's this great scene where he's got the Doomhammer and he's just let Durotan go free, and Orgrim's standing there, and some random fell orc ruts up, and he's just BAM! And he smashes him so hard the orc basically crumbles just in one shot, and then he pulls the hammer back. Really, really liked the presentation of the Doomhammer. It was nice. It's like I said, it's the only thing I really was just like, yeah, the whole movie. Now, me and my friends kept making kind of jokes. Like, every now and again, they'd be in Stormwind, like, going through the market, and I'd be like, oh, shoot, I need to check my auctions real quick. And, it's time to make another confession. We had a receptive audience. In other words, as I've said before, it is, in my opinion, one of the reasons I like going to theaters is because I like enjoying the movie with other people who are also enjoying the movie. And my enjoyment is enhanced by other people also enjoying it. Make sense? And we had a receptive audience. And yes, there was, Tegan. We had a receptive audience, and I liked that. So when I would say these comments, I didn't have to say them just kind of like this. Instead, I had, I could say it in a normal voice, and people other than my friends sitting next to me would also chuckle along with those. So good presentation. That really helped lift out my overall opinion of the movie. Khadgar. Someone asked about Khadgar. I don't want to talk about Khadgar just yet, though. Unless you guys want me to get to my big negative of the movie. Do you guys want me to go ahead and cover it? I've just been kind of saving it in the back of my pocket here. I still have more to talk about. I want to talk more about Gul'dan. I want to talk more about Durotan. There's some stuff regarding the Dark Portal I want to mention. I want to talk about Medivh. I want to talk about Sargeras. I want to talk about Egwene and Adoli. Yeah, I got several things to talk about. Was there any Flandersation? Yes. Alright. I'm seeing several people say yes. Here's my big negative for the movie. Lothar. I have not heard anyone else comment on this, so feel free to be the first. I really didn't like Lothar at all. I felt like every scene he was in was lacking. I felt like every single time he was on the screen, it felt like the actor didn't know how to emote. I felt like the movie kept trying to force him to be the main character and fail at it. I mentioned earlier I had problems with the writing and the directing. My biggest problem with the directing is the director kept trying to... Let me take a step back. If I were to analyze this movie right now, which I'm doing, I would say that what happened was they were making an ensemble piece, and then somewhere along the line, someone, I would naturally think executive meddling, but I don't know, someone said, wait, we need a main character. And they're like, but that's stupid. There is no main character of Warcraft 1. No, but we need a main character. And so the movie was basically already crafted, and then they shoved in these scenes here and there throughout the movie that just kind of abstractly focused on Lothar without fitting the overall arc and fitting the overall narrative. And that feeling just got worse throughout the movie. Each time it happened, it just got a little bit more jarring. Now, I know Eroanna there has talked rather negatively about the movie, but the one thing I will absolutely agree with Eroanna about this is the ending scene, the final two scenes, in fact. I want to talk about the very last scene later. But the second to last scene, where he goes after Blackhand, and it felt like the movie had reached a natural conclusion, and the next scene should have been, now we're going to go ahead, and we're going to prepare for the evacuation, try to get the alliance going, the lead into Warcraft 2. And then out of absolutely nowhere, Lothar swoops in on a griffin. And as I'm watching that scene, I'm like, this doesn't fit in any sense of the word. This doesn't fit narratively. The hero swooping in at the last second is something you do as a writer to save the day or to make the difference. The day has already been lost. The people have already been, the people have already escaped as much as they're going to. This story has reached its conclusion. There's nothing for him to swoop in and save. It doesn't fit directing-wise, because the whole tone of everything leading up to that was the darkness. The fact that this was pulling the Empire Strikes Back effect. We were ending on a loss, as we should. Warcraft 1 ended on a loss. The demonic horde swept over Stormwind, and that is how Warcraft 1 ended. We should have ended on a loss. And the whole movie was building up to that that sort of darkness before the dawn feeling, and then out of nowhere Lothar swoops in and just starts kicking ass abstractly. For no reason. And he accomplishes nothing other than getting Lane's body. That's the only thing that is accomplished by his action there. It felt completely out of place, writing-wise and directing-wise, ignoring the fact that I didn't like the presentation of Lothar as an actor. So that's kind of what I mean when I say Lothar was the biggest negative for the film to me. I didn't like the acting, and I didn't like the way he was basically shoved in several times. I never felt any emotion whatsoever when it came to him and his son. I felt like the fact that Lothar ends up, he loses his son, I felt no impact there at all. Nothing. Not just because it was telegraphed. Every movie death is telegraphed. That doesn't bother me anymore. It was just the fact that it was so lacking in emotion. I felt like Garona got across more of the emotion of the death of his son than Lothar did. Just my opinion. I felt that I felt like there should have been at least some camaraderie between Lothar and Lane and Medivh, and I got that camaraderie between Medivh and Lane. Never really got any of that between between Lothar and anyone, actually. So that, like I said, is the biggest negative of the film for me. Lothar, everything about Lothar. The way it was presented, the way it was acted, the way it was written. He also came across as a bit of an asshole to me. However, I will go ahead and say this, that doesn't bother me that much. I know that sounds weird. Let me explain what I mean by that. Do you remember Star Trek 2009? In Star Trek 2009, Kirk was an asshole. But I was okay with that because the way he was portrayed, you could see what would eventually become Kirk in his presentation. Remember, in no kidding, Deacon. In modern Trek, especially the original series, for those of you who remember the original series, we hear several times about how Kirk was a jackass when he was younger. And time and effort and loss had seasoned him to the point where he was the Kirk we know. In other words, I was okay with his presentation because we were seeing him before he became the character we would come to love later. So I was prepared to be okay with that with Lothar. And I am still okay with that on paper with Lothar if the other things had actually fleshed that out more. So I'm okay with the assholishness if the actor had carried that a little better. If we saw Lothar in the asshole. And that is my biggest complaint with the actor's presentation overall. I never felt like I was looking at Lothar. In fact, to be completely 100% honest, more than a few times in the movie, I had to remind myself that he was playing Lothar. And yeah, I loved the sheep scene too. That was, the whole audience burst into peals of laughter at the sheep scene. For those of you who haven't seen this movie, there's a scene where Khadgar rushes in, sheep's a soldier. You know, polymorph, straight out of the games. And then he's like, don't worry, it only lasts a minute. I loved that. So you might ask, well, hang on. You were asked about Khadgar, Arsh. Why are you talking about Lothar? The reason I say this is because from my analytical perspective, if I was taking myself a bit back here and looked at the movie, Khadgar is the closest thing to a main character the movie has, in my opinion. Now, let me just go ahead and say, now that I've given that little bombshell there, I actually really liked Khadgar. He was pretty much exactly the kind of character I felt like he should be. He was a kid, just started, a lot of potential, and a lot of skill underneath that, but he has no experience to temper that at all. And I like how they presented that, both in the way he casts magic, the way he has difficulty with it, his slowly growing in confidence over the course of the movie. The fact that Medivh noticed immediately his potential. You noticed that Medivh automatically tossed a Tish to Khadgar, right? Each time, actually. And he had no problem with it. And there were several scenes where he was just like, until the next Guardian comes along. And he would always make a point of looking at Khadgar. I liked how they made it clear that Medivh could tell immediately the potential in Khadgar. Very much liked his actor's presentation. Very much liked his character's presentation. Well, that's because professional critics are idiots, Deacon. We've covered that, but we can cover it again. It's worth repeating. Professional critics are idiots. But I wanted to say that in response to Darkstar's question, because he asked about King Lane, and he thought he was the best character on the Alliance side. For me, Khadgar was the best character on the Alliance side, but Lane was a very close second. I thought Lane was perfect for Lane. This is the king who has reigned, basically, you could tell by the way he presented him. This is the king who is not Varian at all. This is the king who is not a war king. He's not a, there's a term for that, and I've used it before, and I can't think of what else on. Warrior. He's not a warrior king. He was a peace king, and I liked that. And I liked the actor's presentation a lot. I liked his idealism. That is very Lane. I liked how he was so willing to reach out to multiple people. I liked how there's this great scene where they're saying, this is probably a trap to go meet with Durotan. I know, Deacon. This is a trap to go meet with Durotan. And Lane's response is basically, yeah, it's probably a trap, but this is the kind of thing we cannot afford to dismiss. If even the possibility of this is true exists, this is incredibly valuable. And I have to admit, the way Lane died was actually pretty awesome. I know, I just made the criticism earlier about Garona's thing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But the fact, when the actual death scene, he goes off and he just starts fighting the orcs. So he's going down swinging, and then you see Garona's hand come around him, and he closes his eyes at peace, knowing what's about to happen. And then she stabs in the back of the neck. That whole scene. I thought that was pretty powerful. And again, that got emotion out of me. That impacted me. It's not quite as horrible as the original canon, where Garona, weeping that she is being forced to do this by Gul'dan, literally carves out his heart. But I still felt it was a powerful scene. Kieran, if I skip over a question, please feel free to save it and repeat it, because I'm not ignoring you. I can't answer every question at the same time. So several people, Bitmonk especially, has pointed this out, along with Zagoten. Oh no, there was no gore in this movie at all. They cut 40 minutes of footage. That's fairly normal. It is an unfortunate reality that movies basically have a time limit on length. Even I tend to actually like longer movies. I liked the extended cut of Lord of the Rings, and I felt like I would have enjoyed those more if I saw them in theater. But I know I am in the minority when it came to that. I know that I am over here in the side when it comes to that kind of thing. So I understand that 40 minutes of footage basically have to be cut. This is a reality where money rules decisions, and where people are not willing to sit in a theater for, what is that? That'd be like 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, in order to watch a movie. I am hopeful that those 40 minutes, which, as Bitmonk has pointed out several times, are mostly character development, especially Garona's backstory, will add even more to the movie. I am very much looking forward to that being in the Blu-ray release or whatever. So, Yeah, exactly, Baronessa. If they release the full length, sold. No issues. But we don't know if they're going to do that. So that's a big asterisk right now. I'm exactly with you on that, Pro. I cannot watch the original theatrical cut. You see this right here? I actually have this in preparation for the Lord of the Rings review. This is the extended cut Blu-ray right here. It's brand new. You can see I haven't even pulled it out of the wrapping yet. This is the only version of the movies, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. So Ginger Ninja asked about the Kirin Tor. I like how the Kirin Tor portrayed overall. They are definitely portrayed as if they are more antagonist than protagonist. However, when the chips come down, they do assist. That's fairly Kirin Tor, in my opinion. The fact that Dalaran was flying, can't deny it, did immediately make me go, why is Dalaran in the air? About 3 seconds after that thought crossed my mind, I was like, you know what? That makes perfect sense. 2 reasons. Number 1, the obvious reasons. WoW players have never really seen... I say specifically WoW, not Warcraft 3. WoW players have only ever seen Dalaran in the air. We've seen it that way in Wrath. We saw it that way during Pandaria. We will see it that way in Legion. So they wanted it to be up there for familiarity effect, instead of having it down on the ground like it was in canon for, you know, until Wrath, actually. They had it in the air. Okay, I'm willing to accept that. This is a new canon. But that brings me to the second reason why I'm willing to accept it. It's a flying magical city. You know, it's the same reason nobody actually batted an eyelash when we heard Dalaran was taken to the skies in Wrath. It made perfect sense for the magical city to be flying. So I'm okay with it because the idea of a magic city that's floating on these continents, or these islands up in the sky, is the kind of thing that's just kind of, okay, that fits. So the Kirin Tor thing, that's really all I really have to mention about the Kirin Tor at the moment. I do like how Khadgar's tiny little tidbit of backstory kind of helps emphasize some of the political realities of the Kirin Tor, which is also fairly in keeping with the original canon, I might add. The whole, it is a great honor for a child to be taken away to become Kirin the Tor, part of the Kirin Tor. That's part of the original canon. People will lose families as a result of being accepted at the mage academies. Admittedly, that's very similar to the Jedi in the Republic era, but it still fits, and I still like that. Okay, so what did I think of the acting of Medivh? Very much liked it. The actor did a great job of portraying the clearly tired, clearly worried, clearly struggling elder mage. Just, ugh. And then he loses to Sargeras. And the moment he does, I love this because the actor's portrayal changes like that. Immediately, he's confident, he is active, he is energetic, he's ready to go, no issues whatsoever, completely on top of things. It was a nice touch. I liked the actor who did Medivh a lot. Hi, Sonashi. So many questions. Save your questions. If I don't answer a question, save it and hit me again with it. I personally feel that the Medivh plotline was done pretty much as well as it could have been. I also like their presentation of it. Remember that this... So, not through Zim. There's only tiny tidbits of Warcraft 2 in this film. Our Medivh was a little, this is almost entirely from the book, The Last Guardian. Our Medivh was a lot more, crazy, because there were 2 personalities constantly vying for domination within him, and it created basically this alternate, screwed up, zipping around personality, right? That's why everyone just kept distance from Medivh. That's why Karazhan was so screwed up in the original timeline, in the game canon. In the movie canon, it's much more clear that in this case, he had done something to reach out to the Fel. They never name drop Sargeras, or any demons whatsoever, actually. They say the word demon, I think, once. But he had reached out to the Fel to try and control it or subdue it, and failed. And there's this great scene where he says, I don't even remember what else I've done. Implying the fact that he had basically completely lost aspects of himself. That he had completely lost time, as he had been so consumed by, and I'm just going to say it, Sargeras, the demon presence. And we do know for a fact there was a demon that was in him. We see it, actually, for one great visually impacting scene. Because, so Medivh kind of gets the green fell eyes, and he gets some kind of, spikes. Remember, the spikes are always emblematic of fell corruption in general. We see that in Gul'dan. I'll talk about that later. But, so we see just a little bit of corruption, and then there's this great scene where Lothar, it's the only scene I felt Lothar actually did well, where Lothar tries to reach out to Medivh, and then Medivh, notices him, recognizes him for just a little bit, and that's the point at which Sargeras says, okay, no. Completely sublimates Medivh inside of him. His entire body just completely shifts into a full demon form, the avatar of Sargeras. Walks into the fell pool and just goes ready to finish it. And that's when, Khadgar saves the day, because Khadgar is awesome. It was a nice money shot. It was a nice, and here's what he actually looks like. And they only show it for a little bit, which they should have. The demons and the Burning Legion should not have a major impact on Warcraft 1 on camera. They were more under the hood. Kil'jaeden and his manipulations, Gul'dan and his manipulations, and Sargeras and his manipulations absolutely drive the plot of Warcraft 1. But they shouldn't be right there on the front page, you know what I mean? They shouldn't be up and obvious and blatant. That is not how it is. And so I like the fact that just, there they were. So, yeah, that's also true, Necro. So I really liked the presentation of Medivh in basically every aspect, especially his final scene. I thought Medivh died pretty well, actually, in the movie, where he's laying there, and he starts, incanting the portal to, kidding Deacon. He starts recanting the portal to shift the portal to go to Stormwind so they can get the hell out of Dodge. Very nice touch. I liked that. So someone asked me about the purple eyes of the elves. I have no idea what to say about that. It doesn't bother me in the tiniest, slightest bit. I didn't even notice it until I thought about it when you mentioned it. I do have to admit, I thought that they did the magic eyes trick a little bit too often. But at the same time, I didn't mind it overall. I would have preferred it if they kept the magic eyes trick how they did it with both Medivh and Khadgar, aka only when they're doing something, as opposed to, say, Antonidas, who always had the blue glare on his eyes, which I thought was a little distracting. The elves having glowing eyes is, of course, something that's going to be a thing. But shrug. I can answer the why purple very easily, though. They wanted to distinguish them from the other various individuals who have magic eyes. And they couldn't be green yet because the Sunwell incident hasn't happened yet. So they could be blue like everyone else, or they could be another color, and that's why they picked purple. So that's why they picked purple, to help distinguish the elves. I actually liked the way the elves looked, by the way, while we're on topic. I can't really say that the dwarves I feel the same on. We did get a glance at Ironforge, and let me just go ahead and say it was a good glance. I liked the tiny shot, the outdoor shot, and the indoor shot of Ironforge. Yes, liked it. My only possible complaint would be that I want to see more, but I cannot say that that is a complaint in any way, shape, or form, because it makes sense. This is not Warcraft 2, nor is it World of Warcraft. This is Warcraft 1. Ironforge should at best be a backdrop thing for a couple scenes, and it was, and I'm okay with that. So I did like what they did with Ironforge. And yeah, this is a boomstick. I also liked that because that actually lines up with the original canon too. Just beginning to invent and getting a firearms, very, very basic one-shot, shoot and forget firearms as a thing about the time of Warcraft 1 actually makes sense. A lot of sense, actually. So, I have never heard anyone say that, Eru. I have heard people say it's better than the Hobbit trilogy. And I have to admit in several ways that I could see that. I could agree with that. But at the same time, if we had the gentleman who played the lead dwarf, I can't think of either the actor or the dwarf's name right now, playing Lothar, sold. I think that would make the movie much better. Okay, has anyone else asked any questions that I haven't answered so far? Real quick. Before I go into my own thoughts about Gul'dan and the Fell. I could summarize my thoughts about the Fell very easily. Perfect presentation. almost 1-to-1 for exactly how Fel should be. Yes, there will, Summer Haze. Almost exactly how Fel should be. You know, great power at a cost. Loved that. The box in the Flying City. No idea. I know Warcraft lore inside and out better than I know any other setting. I have no idea what that box was. I could tell who the old woman was. That was Egwin. Who would I put as Uther? Michael McConaughey. Character flanderization. I already answered that, Dakota. And my answer was Lothar. Is Mirrodin alive during this time? Yes. Gun scene with Garona and sister. Remind me. Thoughts about Blackhand's death scene. As much as I don't like Lothar, I can't, and I am automatically disinclined to enjoy any Lothar scene because I didn't like the actor and I didn't like his presentation. That scene was one of the only things that fit his overall characterization of the movie, which is to say, what's the first thing he sees when he starts fighting the orcs? They're bigger and they're stronger than you. Fight smarter. Don't try to meet them with brute strength. I liked that a lot. And that scene, that final scene where he took out Blackhand, perfectly encapsulates that. It's probably the only two scenes that really made me feel like that was Lothar, the intelligent, tactically brilliant leader of the Alliance from Warcraft 2. You know, the guy who led the remnants north and managed to rally together with his charisma and with the assistance of King... oh my god, I suddenly lost his name. King... Medivh, you know, rallying the Warcraft 2. In other words, the guy who actually is thinking rather than just fighting. And I really, really, really like the fact that that scene encapsulated that. The fact that he was like, all right, I'll fight you 1-to-1. We're gonna go. Yeah, straight on fight. Ah, nope. And one shot. I liked that. I even liked the fact that he was let go. I didn't like the fact that Gul'dan was convinced not to let him go. Even Grom is in the movie, yes. So is Kargath. They don't have any real lines. In fact, I don't think they have any lines, period. Movie did extremely well. We will get a Warcraft 2. It's already been greenlit. What the hell was I saying? About the... Oh, right. The one thing that bothered me, though, about the fact that Gul'dan was talked into letting Lothar go, is the fact that Gul'dan doesn't give a damn. There's one other... Varian was okay. I knew immediately, before he even said the word Varian, that was Varian. It was pretty obvious. So... There's a scene much earlier, which also I liked, because it subverted expectations. Obviously, anybody who knows Warcraft, knows how the battle between Durotan and Gul'dan is going to go. And I'll talk more about that a little bit in detail. I just want to talk about the end of that battle really quick first, because it relates to this. At the end of that battle, Gul'dan cheats. Violates the rules of Khadgar by using something other than his fists and his weapons, and cheats and kills Durotan. And the orcs, Orgrim says, I will not follow such a leader. And the orcs say, yeah, we will not follow you. And then Gul'dan freaking soul drains 3 of them and says, no, you will follow me. I am much stronger than you. Get back to work. And they all capitulate. Now, I do like that scene, but that scene is in total contrast with what happened at the very end with Lothar. Gul'dan doesn't give a damn about Khadgar. Gul'dan doesn't give a damn about orc traditions, and he's shown that. And he's also cowed the orcs already when he flat out violated those rules. Remember? So, why would he let Lothar go? That line of reasoning should not convince him at all. That was my only complaint about that. So the scene with the... I guess that was an okay scene. I have to be honest, I don't have any really thoughts about the Garona being given kindness scene. It makes sense. I mean, the woman whose name I can't even remember right now, Lane's wife, Lothar's sister, was a kind woman, and I like the actress they picked to portray her, and I like the fact that she is the one who kept reaching out to Garona. I also liked how Lothar had the gun behind his back. That was perfect. That was exactly correct. Because A, he's already proven directly and in direct combat that this new boomstick works against the orcs. Remember, he blew off Blackhand's hand? And B, that's his sister in there with someone who might be dangerous, so I like that. Um, the guy we do know who picked up Thrall. That was Nat Pagle. Yes, really. So, let's talk about the Gul'dan Durotan fight a bit. So again, I liked this because this is exactly what this should have been. Durotan, anybody who knows Warcraft lore knows how that fight's going to go. Anyone who didn't, and I asked a few people who didn't know Warcraft lore what they thought of this scene, were actually they were completely caught by surprise by the fact that Durotan lost to Gul'dan, and Gul'dan got away with it. The way most movies are structured, your standard movie format, especially an action hero movie format, is, I'm going to challenge you to one-on-one combat. You're convinced to be stupid, basically, and not kill me on the spot. Why don't you just shoot him, is the name of that trope. He is convinced to fight him one-on-one, and the hero manages a just barely victory, and they're bloodied, and they're beaten, and yeah, freedom! That's how most movies go. No, Gul'dan kills Durotan, and it's awesome, for two big reasons. Three reasons, I should say, actually. So, first and most important reason, the first and most important reason that was awesome was because the fact that it was great seeing Gul'dan take the robe off. Every presentation we have ever seen of Gul'dan, ever, in Warcraft 2, in Frozen Throne, in BC, and in Warlords, every presentation we've seen of Gul'dan is the hobbling warlock. And that makes sense. As I've said many, many times, Gul'dan is burning out his own life constantly. You remember that scene we saw when he creates Hellfire Citadel at the end of Warlords? Several people in chat made the comment that probably cost him about 20 more years of his life. Because he's constantly burning out his life energy to do it. So it makes sense that he's just hobbling along all the time. I'm logical with that. To see Gul'dan take off the robe and stretch and be an orc... And that's what ran through my head. Oh my god, he's actually an orc. Because they consistently portray the orcs as the big, hulking, much stronger, much more physically fit creatures. To see him still be an orc and go into a one-on-one brawl against Durotan was awesome. And also still makes sense, because remember, Fel energy isn't just magic empowerment. Fel energy can also literally, physically empower you, make you stronger. We actually see that even in the movie's presentation of Fel, most notably with Blackhand, but also with the Fel orcs in general. And it still is awesome because Gul'dan is still not the best fighter in the world, so it's not like Durotan is an amazing fighter for holding him off. But every time Durotan hits Gul'dan, pay attention. Gul'dan loses just a little bit of energy. He shrinks down just a bit. It's clear that it's costing him Fel. He's basically burning out Fel battery. Each time he is withering under Durotan's blow, and he has to actually go return and try to... and he actually starts sucking more life out of Durotan to fight Durotan. Correct, Deacon, on both of accounts. And so I really, really liked the fight between Gul'dan and Durotan. It was an awesome fight. And it's also awesome that Durotan basically starts winning against Gul'dan, and Gul'dan's just like, okay, this is stupid. Just rips his life out. And then Durotan makes that big last brave, I'm going to fight against you stand, which again in most movies would be the sign for, some kind of revolution or for the hero to win. And then Gul'dan straight up kills him. And then when the big revolutions start, Gul'dan straight up kills him. Liked that. A lot. As an aside, this is also the first time ever that we've seen Gul'dan without his cloak on, and I know this is kind of off, but I really, really enjoy the fact that Gul'dan's spikes that we've always seen coming out of him in his designs, again, especially in Warlords, were actually spikes literally coming out of him. It wasn't decorative. That I've always assumed that that's just decorative stuff, like the skulls he carries, armor, basically. No, those are spikes literally coming out of his back, because he himself is Fel infused. Nice touch. You're fine, Fuke. Get some good rest, man. I know you have a weird work schedule. Hope to see you join us for more of these in the future. I plan to do these discussion things as often as basically I feel it is warranted, so... So the Shadow Council. I absolutely think the Shadow Council will make an appearance. My big reasoning behind that is, A, the Shadow Council is a pretty significant part of lore, even if this is alternate lore. You don't take something that major and just eject it. B, Grom and Kargath were there. Now I know you're thinking, well, those have nothing to do with the Shadow Council. No, they don't, but they are major characters from the lore that made an appearance. So, see you around to hell. So again, I think the Shadow Council will make an appearance. Possibly not really in Warcraft 2. They make the, but, you know, at least some of that is possible. And yeah, Necros, so for those of you not aware, this movie was originally supposed to come out when Warlords was still active, right? And there's actually several things that mention that. In fact, they actually have a throw-in joke I hope you guys caught about the garrison. I hope you caught that. But I do think it is noticeable and obvious that in several ways they mention the fact that this... They mention stuff that we don't actually know yet. Obviously, I know a few of these things because they're in Legion. And the Gul'dan thing is actually relevant to that as well. You didn't catch the garrison joke? Seriously, it's very close to the beginning. It's when it's right before Lothar first meets Khadgar, is when the garrison joke is tossed in. And it was a nice touch. I like that. And then, of course, Lothar recruits the person for his garrison, Khadgar. But anyways, got it, Kay. Here's the spoiler, orcs and humans. So, one thing I want to talk about is the Aegwin thing. Is it Elodie or Adoli? I never remember. I have a little bit of dyslexia when it comes to reading. Anyways, I am referring to the first Guardian, who was only ever referenced in, you know, he's referenced in the Chronicles book, and he's referenced in the comic. But I think we're actually at the... Where's the music at? Yeah, we're actually almost at the end of the music. Let's zip back to the main music. Here we go. Elodie, apparently the L is first. So, according to work... They never mention the name of the woman in the box, the woman who helps Khadgar out, ever. So my automatic, immediate reaction is, well, that's Aegwin, Medivh's mother. It fits perfectly. It makes way too much sense. And it's exactly how it should be. Apparently that was actually supposed to be Elodie, who, as Matt just pointed out, is male and a half-elf. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm being, you know, contradictory of my own terms. It's not the fact that they changed it, now it sucks, okay? For me, there's no reason to change that character to Elodie. It fits perfectly for it to be Aegwin. It makes perfect sense that Aegwin would also see in Khadgar the potential to effectively become the new Guardian. You notice Khadgar does take on Atish at the end of this, by the way. It would have been nice if Khadgar's hair had gone white with that thing at the end there with the fell. I actually thought that's going to happen when he started absorbing the fell, and then I thought his hair was going to go white, which would have been a nice touch. I'm actually a little surprised they skipped over that. Oh, I know, Revan. Gul'dan was very smart in this movie, surprisingly. I really liked Gul'dan's portrayal a lot. Very, very, very well done. The Draenei design was exactly what I expected. I will admit I am so accustomed to the cartoony style of... I liked it, Aquarian. And what's up, dude? Man, I've been live for an hour. I can't wait to... We're very close to being done with that app. That's going to be an announcement thing for when I'm going live, so you guys can stop having Twitch be terrible. So, yeah, Gul'dan is very much the villain of the movie. One of the villains of the movie. Sargeras is the other one. They never name-drop Sargeras. It is worth noting. I keep calling him Sargeras because, of course, I do. But... now I've lost my train of thought. Damn it. I was talking about the Elodie thing. I was talking about the Aegwin thing. I was talking about the Medivh thing. Khadgar. One thing I didn't like. I mentioned earlier that the Lothar thing was my biggest negative. My second biggest negative is the ending. So I mentioned the scene that for me really... No, I am not Sigun. I've got way too much work to do. I mentioned the scene that didn't make any sense to me, where Lothar swoops in to save the day and then leaves. That scene didn't make any sense to me, but again, the whole movie up to that point had been building up to... It had been doing something very good, in my opinion, as a writer. It had been building you up as if this is a completely typical good versus evil story where we're going to have sacrifice, and we're going to triumph against the bad guys, and then we lose. And I liked that. And then someone along the line must have said, no, wait, we can't end a movie like that. And so then they threw in the Lothar scene, which made no sense, and then they threw in the big Star Wars A New Hope end ceremony scene at the end, which was just what? Why would you do that? you why? Why actually include that? It felt so completely out of place. Now, yeah, there was actually a ceremony at the end. It was basically Lane's death. It was basically, of course I can, Kay. It was basically Lane's funeral. Was effectively what the ceremony was. So okay, I'm okay with that. But it was what it was trying to do is it was trying to cheat by pulling the beginning hooks of Warcraft 2 into Warcraft 1. In other words, for those of you who don't remember, Warcraft 2, began. We lost in Warcraft 1, right? We lost hard in Warcraft 1, and then we escape. I like how I'm saying we. Remember back when being the Alliance was actually a good thing? Sorry. So when we we escape north, get to Lordaeron, form the Alliance for the first time. The first Alliance, really. The first time we started calling them the Alliance. And get together and start to fight back against the demonic horde. That's the beginning of Warcraft 2. In this, they tried to make that getting the unity of the nations thing going in Warcraft 1. So, the Dark Portal is there. It's going to be open. The Horde is going to come through. But it's okay because Stormwind is, for some reason, still in one piece. And we're going to unify now rather than later. Lane's death has showed us how we need to unify, that kind of a thing. What I think they're going to do, and this could make this work, is if Warcraft 2 starts much darker. In other words, Warcraft 2 starts and Stormwind is being sacked and pillaged and destroyed. They did several times in this movie they did show things being pretty dark. Probably my favorite example of that is the Draenei being killed at the beginning. Because I mentioned earlier how I didn't mind the Draenei design. I'm so used to the kind of cartoony... That's what I lost that thought thread. I'm so used to the kind of cartoony presentation which I enjoy of Warcraft. It was a bit of a shock at first to see the Elves and the dwarves and the Draenei who looked odd, but when I actually thought about it, I realized if you're going to have these people alongside human actors, that's the direction you kind of have to go in. I thought it was a good interpretation. And it was horrifying to see... the death of those Draenei right at the beginning. It was horrifying when Blackhand runs up on his wolf, his rider, and and Duraton is just spitting. Is like, I prefer enemies with weapons. And there's this woman huddled with her child, just kind of laden over the wolf like a sack of cloth, crying in terror. Remember that scene? They got across the darkness of the Warcraft quite well in the movie, I think. So, the beginning of Warcraft 2 started with Stormwind being wrecked. Start it with them losing. Start it with... Yeah, I like that too, Revan. Start it with... start with the darkness rather than ending Warcraft 1 with the darkness. And then have the Warcraft 2 maybe being crawling our way back up from that. So that'd be nice. And I would like that. I noticed many Easter eggs. I, of course, noticed the Murloc. I noticed the Hogger wanted poster. And the Kobold wanted poster, both of which were in Goldshire. There are a bunch of little, much smaller Easter eggs. You actually got to see Black Rock Mountain a couple of times, which is cool. And a few other tiny little tidbits like that. Some people would argue that the flower that Medivh gave to Garona was a thing. I really doubt they will too, Protea, to be completely honest with you. Critics. Hashtag stupid critics. We're gonna start a new hashtag. I doubt they'll go in that direction too, but oh, they should. They should. Yeah, that last scene. So they even call it the Alliance. They've got the Elves there. They've got the other human kingdoms. They do name drop the Seven Kingdoms. Nice touch. They had someone who, in my opinion, was probably Paranold. You remember the obstinate-looking guy who was just kind of a jackass? In my opinion, that guy was probably not Paranold. Am I using the right name? I don't think it is Paranold. It's the leader of Alterac. Is who I think that was. And his entire presentation, the way he acted, every scene he was in, which is only the 3, made me think that, and made me lean in that direction. He could have also been Greymane. Would have still fit. The Gilnean king, I should say, actually, because at this point I don't think it was Gen. I'm not actually sure. I'd have to think about the timing of that. Hey, Bragwin. The elves just kind of being like, and the dwarves just being like, we are not just people that can be used for your, it's a nice touch. I mentioned this earlier. I don't remember if it was in chat or online, but I think it was in chat. Someone pointed out how the Alliance wasn't in this, and I actually felt like that was a deliberate choice on the writer. It's one of the few things I think that was actually well written when it comes to the movie. They keep saying we've been at peace for years. All the races of Azeroth come together and are in unity. Now, again, this is alternate timeline, so who knows, but if this is anything like our Warcraft, that is what we call a paper fantasy, to quote from Babylon 5. In other words, a fake peace. Sis and I actually are in full agreement on this concept, by the way. The idea that they are at peace because they are not at war. But we are actually shown throughout the course of the movie that the various different... oh no, Necro. Totally different person. We are shown throughout the course of the movie that there's not really peace. That the races are not unified. That they are not... They don't coordinate well. None of them actually give a damn about each other, really, And I like that. I like that presentation. Because even if you were to... So if you were to actually look at Warcraft lore for a second, if you look at the history, the Troll Wars were... Troll Wars were about 1,400 years earlier, and the War of the Three Hammers was about 300 years earlier, right? Now, think about it in whichever direction you want to, but that's about 300 years of relative peace, with no real thing interrupting it, not counting the Null Wars, which is a brand new thing. So I could see the peace comment, but I like that the movie showed that they weren't really at peace, that they weren't really unified, that they needed to unify, that was actually one of the themes of the movie. And there's also this really great line that Lane gave to Garona. Like I said, I liked the scene. I liked Lane's presentation when Garona actually kills him. And I like the fact that he gives her this line, I forget how he says it, but if orcs and humans are ever to have peace, if the horde is ever to ally with us, or however he says that, then you need to survive. We need to start with it. We need to start working on that. Me and several of the people in the audience gave a very loud, obvious snort of derision, because it's like in lore, 35 years later? And the Horde and Alliance are still biting at each other's necks for no reason. Great idea, Lane, but you'd be proud of your grandson. I find myself wondering, Necro, if they wrote the Null Wars after they started writing the movie. I know that sounds weird, but remember, we never even heard of the Null Wars. And none of us had. Until this came along. And just out of nowhere, there's this Null War that happened right before Warcraft. Well, that's not right before, like 70 years, I want to say. I'm actually looking up the timeline right now. I liked that, actually, though. I like the Null Wars. I like that it actually helped. Yeah, here, 75 years. I like the Null Wars. It actually did a lot of good things for the story of Stormwind, especially. And yeah, that's Lane's father, Barathon. In fairness, that's still 75 years of peace. That's not an insignificant period of time. So I'm still okay with the peace statement, even if it's obviously a different series of canon. But again, regardless of the peace statement, as Eru and I both said, the showing the need to unify was something I feel they did right. So, Darkstar asked a question like 3 times now. Hang on, let me scroll up. I have caught it, I just keep going, right. How did Khadgar survive the Fell? So, I can only answer that question from the perspective of the game canon. But Fell is not universally irresistible, I think is the word I want to use. It's not like you can't resist it. We know this because the player character can be a warlock. Because there are good warlocks. There are warlocks out there who keep themselves under control, who limit their usage of the fel, and don't get fully corrupted by it. In a similar manner to the dark side over in Star Wars, it is a very risky thing to do. You are at constant risk of falling into that loop of doing too much and losing yourself, but it is still possible. And of all the people we've seen so far who could probably pull it off for a few seconds of channeling the fel, I'd probably put Khadgar towards the top of that list of being able to pull that off. That being said, I think there's a tiny little note that my sister noticed in the movie as well, that where nice Brakeman, where it looked like he was actually being consumed by the fel, and he sees Lothar and he sees Medivh, and that helps him to center himself just a little bit, so he could go ahead and actually do the most logical thing available. By the way, let me just go ahead and say the way Khadgar got rid of the fel made perfect sense. Can't get rid of the fel in the traditional sense. Can't absorb it into himself. He would end up just like Medivh. Can't put it back into Medivh. That'll just empower him. It needs to go somewhere. In something. Yeah, Bragwin, did you advertise me? Come on. The word of mouth. Come on. He literally detonated the fel. He absolutely, and that is absolutely the right thing, in my opinion. Again, this is going more from game canon than movie canon. But if you have a lot of fel in one spot and you need to get rid of it, detonating it is probably the best option. It's still very damaging. Several people in the audience had almost the exact same line, which is, oh, so that's why, so that's when it became Deadwind Pass, because, and the funny thing is, that's actually kind of how it happened, if you'll remember, in our canon. Not at that point in time, it happened earlier, but still, Deadwind Pass happened because, detonation of fel energy. So I felt like that was a very smart thing for them to do with regards to Khadgar and the fel pool. Someone asked about the arcane pool in Karazhan. Remember that Karazhan was specifically built in that one spot, specifically because of the fact that there were multiple ley lines. In fact, most ley lines of the world unified in that one spot. And we kind of see that with the arcane energy kind of flowing into that arcane pool even in the movie. In other words, that pool is basically the exact point at which those ley lines converge. Hence, a massive font of magical energy. Pretty simple, really. If I was writing the story, I would have the introduction of fel into what is effectively the nexus point of the ley lines be a significant plot point later on, but I am not writing the story. Basically, yes, Darkstar. You're terrible, Bragman. The line about light, darkness, darkness, light, whether it means anything or not in the movie, no idea. In original canon, absolutely it means something. Let's look at the Naru as the best. I kept thinking about that. The Naru are the greatest example of that. They start out super light, and over their extremely long lifeline, or if they are killed, they slowly get darker and darker and darker until they turn into a pure void creature. But once the pure void creature dies, it reverts back to light. And this is the Naru life cycle going back and forth between these two things. The darkness actually coming from the light, and the light actually coming from the darkness. I think that's a teaser as well for future storylines. I think we're getting a little bit of the fact that the Void has kind of taken the foray of the new big bad for the setting, and we're seeing that being presented in the movie as well. Just my take on it. Given the fact that they've already hinted several Legion things in the Warcraft movie, it would seem logical if they're taking it in that direction. Arcane is a natural occurring element, yes, Dakota, in the universe in general, not just on Azeroth. And yeah, I love that too, Arrow. Oh, speaking of which, Morose. Morose is awesome. Yeah, there was some good humor. I laughed at several scenes. Yes, it's called Karazhan, Darkstar. They even say it, they even call it Karazhan several times in the movie, which is funny in its own right, but I'll get to that later. Yeah, Arcane is magic that is ordered. Pure magic that is ordered. Fel is pure magic that is chaotic. No, I did not, Eru. In fact, I have no idea what you're talking about. What the hell was I about to talk about? Ley lines, Fel. Climbing to the top of the tower, Karazhan. I had a thought thread. Whatever. What else was I going to talk about? I talked about Egwin. Talked about Khadgar. Haven, it's to my knowledge, yes, Aquarian. Karazhan looked pretty good, in my opinion. They only showed a little bit of it, but the library was well done. The stairs were well done. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, several people in the audience actually burst into giggle fits when Thrall would go, Rah! I'm trying to think. Let me just run through the movie in my head real quick. One thing I liked, shamans were implied but never stated outright, Vandalia. One thing I did actually like quite a bit was that some people have pointed out that they think it's weird that Durotan just suddenly decides to go against, Gul'dan and the will of the Orcs in general. I disagree completely, because I think Durotan was missing a critical but key part of the puzzle. It wasn't until he's on another planet, he's on Azeroth, and he looks around, and he has this wonderful line to Orgrim. Look around you. Doesn't it look familiar? Everywhere Gul'dan's magic is, the land dies. Now, we know in original canon, Gul'dan deliberately killed the land back in Durotar, kind of to help push the Horde along. Remember, he severed the connection to the Orcs to the elements, and then he used fell magic constantly. However, yeah, I noticed that too, Bragwin. And yes, Thrall is in the movie. He is born in the movie, the first Orc born in Azeroth. So I like the fact that Durotan is intelligent enough now that he sees that he sees on another world the same exact things that were happening on Draenor happening. Now he's like, okay, now I'm going to do something about this because it's pretty clear this is messed up. No, Takoida, nor indeed do I think they should have been. It is worth noting Ner'zhul make absolutely no appearances during the course of the entire movie. And I don't think he should. Ner'zhul, his story doesn't belong in Warcraft 1. Gul'dan's story belongs in Warcraft 1. Yeah, that was a very good... Like I said, even though there's some bad directing and bad writing in this movie, there's also some very good writing and good directing in this movie. I think the point of that Darkstar is to emphasize something that has actually never been true in the games, or in the books, or anything. In our canon, when you go through a portal, you're there. There's no transitionary period. I think they wanted that transitionary period basically for the, adding through the effect of traveling from world to world thing. Notice they were going through the Twisting Nether, by the way. Nice touch. Yes, they did change. Like I said, there were several changes to canon. I listed several, like 4 that were related to Garona. But the fact that you have to actually have fel energy infused into you in order to become a green orc was nice. Thrall being a good example of that. I also really like that Medivh had the power to basically absorb fel energy. It was a nice touch. First of all, because we know he's already corrupted by fel at that point in time, so fel energy wouldn't really be a bad thing for him to do. Second of all, because it takes him a long time. It takes him a considerable amount of time and considerable effort in order to do it. And I'm okay with that. Being able to, specifically take an energy source, in this case fel, and remove it from the circumstance is the kind of thing that shouldn't be tossed around as a casual, oh, okay, hang on, shh, because that just invalidates the threat of fel. Instead, making that huge effort, which wouldn't have even succeeded if Khadgar hadn't been defending him. Nice touch. I like that. I wouldn't say addicted to fel in the classical sense of the word. More like needed more fel. Because, remember, Gul'dan was pretty much constantly burning off his own energy. Is Gul'dan more powerful than Ner'zhul? Oh, absolutely. Gul'dan is arguably one of the strongest characters in the setting, not counting the really big heavies, like Sargeras and whatnot. We talked about that earlier, Venatri, but yes, that is correct. Again, new continuity. And yeah, I did like how several times Gul'dan was portrayed as just not giving a crap. I think it was Revan pointed out earlier, when he just shoves this one entire cage of humans over the edge just out of anger, just out of screw you. I liked that too, Darkstar. The portal being flat on the ground was a very nice touch. I don't know, Magister. It's entirely possible there is no Ner'zhul in this particular continuity. I would say all bets are off, but it's worth noting that's not really true. They are, even though the canon is changed, it is not changed as much as I thought it would be. It is very similar to existing Warcraft lore. Very, very similar, actually. Like I said, the first 30 minutes, I thought it was actually just going to be a retelling rather than a reimagining. Not that I'm against a reimagining. Honestly, even there are only a few things I think that would really invalidate it from being canon, because most of the things that were changed could fall into the purview of retcon. Remember, and I hate to point this out again, our actual understanding of the lore of around Warcraft 1 is incredibly vague, because there's actually 3 different sources for that lore, and all 3 of them contradict each other. Technically 4, because there's actually 2 books. That's right, this is the alternate Azeroth. This is the one... No. Yeah, that was pretty messed up, Darkstar. Well, considering the whole Draenor is dying thing was a part of the original canon, too, and that was part of his motivation, yeah. Yes, I and the studio both expect to do more Warcraft movies. It's possible they may skip over Warcraft 2. I kind of hope they don't. There's a lot of story potential with Warcraft 2. I am hesitant about them doing Warcraft 3, not because I think it will be bad, but because people will complain to high heaven about how it's not exactly like Warcraft 3. You think people are complaining now because Warcraft 1 isn't exactly like... Warcraft the movie isn't exactly like Warcraft 1. You have no idea the complaints that'll happen if they do a movie about Warcraft 3, which changes things. Remember, Warcraft 3 was the first Warcraft where story took the forefront of the game. Where story was actually a big deal. And there was a lot of it. A lot of plot, a lot of characterization, a lot of setting. Most of what we know about Azeroth and the Warcraft setting came from Warcraft 3. So imagine how much people would complain when they do that one. Yes, but both of those still contradict each other a few times, Necro. And contradict WoW, which, like I said... Is it raining? No. Yeah, I saw the link arrow. I probably won't pick it up anytime soon. I don't have time to read books right now. I made time for the Illidan book, just because it was the Illidan book. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen Michael McConaughey in real life, but if they actually got... I think he could play Kel'Thuzad, legitimately. A real live-action Kel'Thuzad. And it would be awesome. I'm trying to think, do I have anything else I wanted to cover before I just open the floor? I do like something that they never explain in... they never actually explained this in the movie, but it fits original canon, where Medivh automatically assumes that Khadgar is one of the hunters, one of the anti-Guardian hunters from the Kirin Tor. Now, it's obvious to us who know the story about that, but they never actually explain that in the movie, if you noticed. There's just kind of this vague intimation that the Kirin Tor are after the Guardian for some reason. But I did like that. Yes, I did, Necro, and to Battlefield Earth, as I shared earlier. Warcraft 2 will end with one of those Pyrrhic victory things, I think, if they do it properly. Warcraft 1 would be a definitive loss. Warcraft 2 would be a Pyrrhic victory. Warcraft 3 would be a victory and a loss kind of at the same time. Kind of like the original StarCraft. You know. So I don't have anything else I want to discuss, so I'm just going to open the floor. If anybody out there wants to share anything, talk about anything, ask questions, talk to each other. That's the whole point of the discussion format. Hit me with more questions that I didn't answer because I missed them because I'm terrible. In the original canon Darkstar, more people don't have those because it's actually kind of a big deal to work with a griffin. They are intelligent creatures, if not fully sentient and sapient, so it's not like you can just tame them properly. That's one of the reasons why the Wildhammer clan is such a big deal. How did I feel about the graphics? I liked them. I actually felt like the... I hate to repeat my thought from like a year ago, before the movie was even really announced properly, but I still feel they should have done a full CGI movie. I felt the CGI orcs were actually very well done, and the orcs in scenes with other orcs worked quite well, and the scenes with orcs and other humans worked pretty well, and the scenes with humans and other humans worked very well, so I actually liked the CGI overall. Thoughts on the soundtrack? Big plus. Very Warcrafty without actually being literally Warcraft, at least until the credits where they start playing the WoW title screen theme from Vanilla. How do I upgrade Warlord's gear? That's not a question related to this. I also am not 100% sure how to do that, so I can't answer you. How did Lothar manage to get one? Good question. Let me know when you figure that out. If I was to be dismissive, interrogatory, I would say it's because they wanted him to be more the hero. As I mentioned, kind of an artificial focus on Lothar being the main character, when in my opinion he wasn't. Khadgar was the closest thing to a main character we had. This is just an aside, but I actually really liked the scene with Khadgar and Garona. That was nice. And amusing. If you don't know the one I'm talking about, I'm referring to the scene where Garona is like, he wants to lay with me, but I would not do it. He would make a poor mate. You know, that whole scene was great. The giant cube thing is something that I'm going to actually keep my mouth shut on, because we're not talking about Legion spoilers here. Just saying that is a bit of a Legion spoiler. Varian is in the movie, and called out by name. He is, of course, quite young, as he should be. Yeah, Durotan was absolutely also a main character. Gul'dan was an excellent main focus villain. Durotan was a good main character. Orgrim got a lot more screen time than I thought he would. And Orgrim was pretty awesome, actually, in my opinion. Even ignoring my obvious fangasming over the Doomhammer. And Khadgar. Garona felt like she should have had more focus, but then again, given that we know a lot of Garona's story was in that 40 minutes of cut footage, that makes a degree of sense. Like, when I examine the movie, it feels like there should be more scenes with her. Like, they were built as if those scenes were there and they were removed, and again, we know that's true, so... The most off thing about the movie? Well, I actually already answered that, Deutsch. In fact, I built up to it for quite a bit. Lothar was the most off thing for me. I did too, Darkrai. What do I do? Do I just walk in? I don't know. It's never done that before. I did like the guy they got to play Antonidas. I'm, of course, assuming it's Antonidas. Yeah. Very possible yes to Koida. Very possible. They never once call it out straight as Sargeras. If you look up any of the discussions or theorycrafts or analysis or even the script, Sargeras is actually referenced. Yes, Sargeras is referenced in the script. So it's obvious they had that in mind, but because of what's shown on screen, it's very possible they could take it another direction. Oh no, I intend to change both logos, Summer Haze. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I have had very, 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 very little spare time. I'm actually, so for those who don't know, if you go to my main webpage, not lorerunner.com, if you go to my features YouTube, you know, the Lore Runner YouTube, you'll see a new banner at the top, which I'm still in the middle of working on. It's a work in progress. I fully intend to change it, but you could see it and be like, hey, so feel free to check that out. I saw that, Necro. There was an interview about that. That was recent, either today or yesterday, very recent. I was literally gone all day yesterday, so I'm not sure, you know, if it was yesterday or today. Of course he was, Magister. Mages can already elongate their lives, and... yeah, I mean, he's like 70 by the time Warcraft 3 rolls around. I will not argue it is not a flawed movie, Zagon. It was yesterday, then. Thank you, Necro. Yeah, there's tons of info they talked about Legion yesterday. Some of which actually makes me hesitant for Legion, and some of which makes me hopeful. We'll see. But yes, Madan has apparently added multi-dimensional travels and into his repertoire of being a goddamn Mary Sue. I had to explain Madon to my sister on the car ride yesterday, and she says, that sounds terrible. Yeah. Thank you, Deutsch. Trying to think. I think I'm kind of out of stuff. So, anybody else got anything else? Or else I'll just go ahead and cut this off and get back to work on editing. For those of you who don't visit my website regularly, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, I'll go ahead and give this announcement here for my streaming people. Guess that's you guys. So this would be, yep, tomorrow. Wait, that can't be right. No, that's right. That can't be right. Give me a second. I need to double check a date, a timestamp. No, that's totally correct. So E3 starts tomorrow, and our coverage of E3 starts tomorrow. I have the times and dates up on my website for the stuff I intend to cover specifically. I also will be going pretty much straight from that into 4-Job Fiesta, which will be our next big stream after that. We'll also, tomorrow, probably at 11 a.m. EST, we're probably going to do our very, very first news section. That's going to become a regular feature of the show, where we just take some time like this in a discussion format and discuss news that's happened in the week in geek culture in general when it comes to video games, books, movies, whatever. I actually have a list of stuff to talk about ready to go, and that's kind of how that's going to work. Every week I will have this notepad. It's right here, right next to my desk. Anytime I have something I feel is worth talking about for the news discussion, I'm going to go ahead and make a note here, say I want to talk about this and I want to talk about this. Some people have asked me, maybe I should do it after E3, but I actually disagree with that because I already have like 5 things to talk about before E3. I'd rather not have 30 things to talk about after E3. You follow? We'll talk about E3 next Sunday when we start doing when we do the next week's news section. That's all I got. Thank you for joining me, all of you. It's been fun. I will, of course, be putting this up on the new channel, the streams channel. So, yeah. See you around.